we have to protect their national interests.
Kabisa, we know it also would make sense unatuma
A very good morning to everyone and welcome to the ODPP Café. This is a show brought to you by the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. It takes place every Friday from 8 a.m. We apologize for the delay in transmission. Again, we had technical challenges, but we are ready to start now. Karibu sana to the show. Feel free to let us know where you're watching us from, where you're tuned in from. Like our YouTube channel, Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, and subscribe to it. You can watch the show from there as well. Follow us on Twitter at ODPP_KE, and of course, Facebook, Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. There's a team on standby that is going to be able to answer to questions you may have on the topic today. Feel free to ask, feel free to comment, and just share what you have on the topic. Engage with us because that is what keeps us going every other week. As usual, before I start, I'm going to take a quick sneak into the courts this week and, of course, what has been happening at the ODPP. So this week at the ODPP, there was, of course, the world has been celebrating. I think it's not the world, it's Africans have been celebrating the Day of the African Child. Unless the world just joins us, but then it's an African celebration. And the ODPP had an engagement in Turkana where they marked the Day of the African Child. Of course, there's a lot of things going on that affects the African child: poverty, literacy, child marriages, neglect and abuse. And this was a specific in context to the Turkana County. So children in remote areas hardly access justice, and that is what they were trying to address there. The host community called upon state and non-state actors to support them as well. They are marginalized and in need, and their poverty levels are quite high. They feel discriminated, and this has created a lot of hostility between the host community and the refugee communities. The host, who are the Turkana community, feel as though a lot of focus has been given to the refugee, such that when something happens that brings them in conflict, then they feel as though we or the law takes care of the refugee more than the host. Yani tunachunga wageni sana kutushinda sisi wenyewe, and that has caused a lot of hostility there. So that's something that needs to be looked at by the state and non-state actors to just resolve or manage that conflict that seems to be arising. The other thing that happened at the ODPP this week is that the DPP Nurdin Haji called on the new CJ Martha Koome to discuss areas of mutual collaboration between the two agencies. They pledged to work under the National Council on the Administration of Justice, NCAJ, to enhance access to justice to all Kenyans. Remember, the criminal justice system has many actors, and this is just another one of them. Among key areas the DPP and the CJ prioritizes to collaborate are holding of service monthly to expedite hearing of delayed anti-corruption and the judicial review cases, community engagement, Justice Week to decongest prisons. Remember, nowadays, the criminal justice system is out to be restorative, rehabilitative, and not punitive. So decongestion of the criminal justice system is one of those important things that have to be discussed by the actors in the criminal justice system. Now into the courts, we'll just take a look at a few cases we are going to highlight on a few cases. Like I always say, it's not exhaustive. There's so much happening, and we just picked a few of those that we think will pique your interest. So there's a businessman who was charged with tax evasion of 23 million. He was freed on a bond of 20 million. Zamir Kasamali was charged with 9 counts of tax fraud related offenses, which ran from 2015 up until 2019. The prosecution submitted that on diverse dates between 1st January and 31st December 2015, Kasamali, who is the managing director of Mahir Nakuru Automize Limited, knowingly omitted from their return an amount denying KRA value added tax of about 23 million. So he was released on 20 million bond. Remember, we talked about bonds, and it doesn't mean that he's been set free. It means that he's out, but will be responding to charges. And of course, there are those conditions that have been put in place to ensure that he doesn't skip hearing of his court case. So he had another count where he was charged with evasion of 26, this must be 26B. In the third count, he faced 3 million tax evasion, while in the fourth, he was charged with 6 million. I think this is 6B. Maths is not for everyone, remember. So he pleaded not guilty to all charges, and the matter will be mentioned on 30th of June this year. So that's about tax evasion, and clearly it's a criminal offense. So this guy has to definitely respond to those charges. The next case was about a woman who was found guilty of robbery with violence. A house help who worked in the former cabinet minister's Maina Wanjigi's house was convicted of robbery with violence. The prosecution proved that Dorcas Mumbi committed the offense alongside Hilda Nabweko at Rhino Park Estate in Karen in 2013. So she was found guilty of robbery with violence, quite a serious charge, and she was found guilty of it. The court heard that she aided the entry of robbers into Wanjigi's house. The robbers tied and tortured Wanjigi and his wife using an iron box before fleeing with valuables. Nabweko was acquitted of the robbery charges, but was found guilty of possessing a 7,000 mobile phone stolen in the scene. So sentencing will be done on June 18th. So that was a case of robbery with violence by house helps. And I think it made some headline news just some time back. This was one of this. The next case is about a very interesting case that we saw on social media. I don't know whether you saw a child driving a Prado. And then it happens to be a 7-year-old boy driving a Prado, parking the Prado, and we were all in awe. I mean, how does that happen? But he did. The father was fined 20,000, or he serves 3 months in jail for allowing his 7-year-old son to drive his vehicle. Ayub Kinyanjui was charged after a video showing his son driving a Prado TX that was circulating on social media. I don't know why parents do this. It's quite a risk. I mean, if anything is to happen in such a case. So he pleaded guilty to the charge of allowing an unauthorized person to drive a motor vehicle along Thika Kandara Road on June 12th. It's quite sad that this happened on a highway. So he was charged, and he admitted, and he was charged 20,000 or a 3-month jail sentence. The next case is about an NIS officer charged with 350,000 Kenya shilling fraud. An NIS officer was charged with obtaining 350,000 by false pretense. The prosecution submitted that on 23rd November 2020, Simon Mwaura obtained 350,000 from Sami Kipserem, pretending that he was in a position to take his son to Australia for further studies. This is so wrong. This is just prying on the vulnerability of those who are trying to earn a living, you know, and sometimes people just fall prey to these promises. So the NIS officer was found guilty of this charge. So he was also charged with being in possession of bang and 3 vehicle registration numbers suspected to have been stolen or unlawfully obtained. He denied the charges and was granted 300,000 bail and an alternative 500,000 bond. The case will be mentioned on June 29th for pre-trial. Remember, this happens nowadays. Pre-trial sessions are organized just for the cases to go on smoothly. Again, this one, you've seen it on social media about Pastor Nganga. He was charged with a fraud case. This televangelist, James Nganga, was adjourned. His case was adjourned to allow the recording of a witness statement. Nganga was charged with obtaining 3.6 million from a businessman, Wickson Joroge, in 2016 by falsely pretending he would lease a 17-bedroom house to him in Karen. Wow. This is a man of a cloth that he's been accused of fraud, but that case is ongoing. So the case was adjourned to September 7th, and the prosecution was directed to serve the accused with a witness statement within 14 days. Nganga is out on a 500,000 Kenya shilling bail. again, just try and understand, remember, or go back to our recordings about bail and see exactly what that means. It means that a person is not free. Because every time we see bail has been set, we always imagine that awe ameachiliwa, kesi imekunywa maji. But in essence, everybody has a right to bail or bond, of course, depending on other conditions. Like we say, bail and bond come with responsibility. So of course, the court will assess if you're worthy of it and decide whether to give it to you or not. So like I mentioned earlier, and when I was introducing about what was happening at the ODPP, we talked about the Day of the African Child, and that is what has been happening this week. Even on our social media handles, we've been talking about the Day of the African Child. And I'll allow my guests to just give us a preview of exactly what this means. I don't want to be the one to explain it to you, but it's very interesting that it is actually one of those that is one of those days that is celebrated Africa-wide, and it's quite serious. So I want to introduce my guest for a minute, and then I'll take you to a video that just gives context about today's show. And of course, welcome wageni wangu wa leo. Chai inakuja.
It's quite cold.
Yes. So I'll start with the guest and the lady in the show. Please tell us your name and what you do and where you do this from.
Good morning. My name is Rose Mwangi. I am an Assistant Director, Children's Services, and I am based at the headquarters.
At the headquarters. Yeah. Children's Services.
Children.
Are you a lawyer?
No, I am a social scientist.
Awesome. So we tuko pamoja hapo.
Yes.
Kindly introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Madam Anita, for welcoming me to the show. My name is Mark Barasa. I'm an acting Senior Assistant Director of Public Prosecutions, currently the head of Hate Speech and Election Justice Division. Today, I'm holding brief for the head of Children Division, that is Madam Karimi. I'm here to hold brief for her. I've previously also worked in the Children's Department within the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions.
Oh, that's good.
So thank you for having me on the show.
Karibu sana. You're the lawyer on the show.
Thank you.
And the experts in law. And that thing about hate speech, we definitely need to have a session to discuss it soon. I hope you'll come back and tell us exactly what your mandate is under that department.
Very true.
So we are talking about the Day of the African Child, and there's a video that's going to go up just to give context to today's discussion. So just take a minute or two and have a look at the video.
Sisi kama ofisi ya mashtaka tuliamua kwamba tutakuja hapa kujumuika na nyinyi ili tuweze kwanza kujua kuna shida gani na vipi sisi kama watu wanaosimamia mambo ya mashtaka tunaweza kuwasaidia wenzetu kwa upande wa correction, yani prisons, ambao tunafanya kazi nao karibu sana, na watoto wetu nyinyi mlioko hapa. Kama mko hapa na hamwezi kupata yani ile wanaita access to justice, kupata njia ya kuweza kuhudumiwa ili kama ni kesi imalizike haraka na ifanywe kisawasawa, itakuwa sisi tumewadhulumu. Ndio kwa ajili leo tuko hapa. Tumeleta nafikiria kompyuta 2 na ziko na kamera zake na accessories. Lakini nafikiria tutaongeza 2 nyingine ili iweze kwenda kwa upande wa stadi. Tusikuwe na excuse ya kwamba hamwezi kusikizwa.
Now, we are all aware about the corona pandemic that hit us in March and the government directives that led to the scaling down of the courts. So that has meant that these children being held at Committee YCTC cannot access the courts physically. And we wanted to enhance that and to mark it on this day. So the DPP said that he would like to conduct an activity as a way of giving back to these children and to the community around him. And therefore, that is why we are here today. So it is a CSR together with the commemoration of the Day of the African Child. So the Day of the African Child is celebrated by countries at the AU. And it is done on 16th of June every year in commemoration of the children who were massacred in Soweto on June 16, I think 1976. And what happened on that day is that the children went to the streets to demonstrate for their rights. They wanted rights to education, and they were also protesting against apartheid. And in the process, unfortunately, so many of these children were killed. And therefore, the African Union decided that it will not be forgotten. And it brought the state parties together and agreed in 1991 that they would commemorate that day every 16th of June. So this year the theme was access to child-friendly justice. And we thought because we are part of the justice system and we process these children, we handle them one-on-one basis. It is good to commemorate this day and do an activity that will enhance the access to justice.
The whole idea was to come together, appreciate the fact that we have children who are in conflict with the law, that as much as they're in conflict with the law, they are our children. So we have heard from them, we have heard from their handlers, and what we have learned is that these children are not, it's not the end of the road for them.
Due to Corona, the children are not able to leave, and it might be a while before the cases can be concluded. So as a way to enhance justice and to allow the children to go back to their lives, the cases will be reviewed. Out of it, some will be diverted. Out of it, some are going to go through plea bargaining. And out of them, some will be withdrawn under Section 87A. And this is all in line with our mandate and our policies on diversion and plea bargaining.
Wale watoto ambao wana hiyo bonds ndio ya from 1,000 to 5,000, hiyo sisi tutalipa by Thursday. Kutoka wiki ijayo tutakuja hapa kumaliza hii mambo ya remand kwanza, ili tumalizane nayo. Wale wanaweza kwenda nyumbani wataenda, lakini tukubaliane, hamtarudi alafu muende mfanye makosa tena, si ndio? Manake tutakuwa na record, mkifanya makosa tena sasa hatutaangaliana tena.
The DPP also initiated a mentorship program to be led by the ODPP staff to guide, impart life skills and support the youth to get back on track.
Jambo lingine ambayo tutafanya pia ni mentorship. Nimezungumza na wenzangu kutoka ODPP, labda tutaleta wengine wale ambao wanataka kuwa wakili, watakaa na wao kuzungumza, waulize ni vipi mtu anaweza kuwa wakili, si ndio?
We have heard from the head of the institution that they only have one computer and it's serving all the stations. So they are having a challenge with having all their cases mentioned and heard. So we hope that with the 2 desktops, it's going to upscale how much they can have the virtual sessions. In addition, we have also partnered with Kenya Red Cross Society, and Kenya Red Cross Society is going to be offering virtual psychosocial support for the children and also entertainment sessions, because we know the children are locked in here, they cannot go out, and neither can visitors come in, so they are not in contact with their parents.
When these children, even if we have them released after diversion or plea bargain, are they going to be accepted by the families? It's very important, because you might put them out there, you might release them. Where are they going? Are they going to come back to the system? We don't want these children to go back to the system.
Tumezungumza na Red Cross ya kwamba tutakuwa tunafanya mambo ya kuweza kuwapoeza, ili muweze kuzungumza, muwe na mtu ambaye anaweza kuwazungumzia na kuwashughulikia kwa mambo ya psychosocial support.
Our heart is at the right place, and we must admit that the office of the DPP, through the DPP himself, have been focused in ensuring that the justice is served and is brought to the people no matter. As much as we are the prosecutors, we also respect the human rights of the prisoners. And in this case, these are child offenders. They're very young, very delicate. It's a time for them to have a second chance.
Good. That was a video from last year's Day of the African Child, and we just get to understand what has happened this year, because there was a continuation of this program. It wasn't just a one-off. So I'll ask you, Mr. Baraza, what have you done as ODPP this year to celebrate or to commemorate the Day of the African Child?
Thank you very much, Madam Anita. First of all, the theme for this year's celebration of the Day of the African Child is 30 years on since the adoption of Agenda 2040. This is an agenda that the African Committee of Experts on the Welfare and Rights of the Child, which is established under the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, that committee came up with a theme. Every year it comes up with a theme to mark the African Day of the Child on 16th of June every year. And that committee this year came up with the theme of accelerating the implementation of Agenda 2040, 30 years on. As we have heard from the video, the Day of the Child has its origin on 16th of June 1976 in Soweto, South Africa, when the black children were protesting against the apartheid regime. They wanted their rights to education, and they were massacred on their way to Orlando Stadium. So since that day, the Organization of the African Unity then adopted 16th June as the Day of the African Child. Subsequently, the African Union also adopted that date, and it has always been observed and marked. So this year, we are under the theme accelerating implementation of Agenda 2040. Agenda 2040 is a roadmap. And in this roadmap, the African Committee of Experts came up with a blueprint on how to realize the rights of the child. And they came up with Agenda 2040. These are 10 goals. These are 10 goals which need to be realized in a period of up to the year 2040. The vision is to have an Africa fit for children. That is the vision, to have an Africa fit for children. Yeah. And under this agenda, there are 10 goals. This year, we are focusing on 4 important goals. One of the goals is to have national legislative, institutional, and policy framework in place. A child-friendly national legislative and institutional framework in place for all member states. They need to fulfill that goal. Another goal is to ensure that we have a child-sensitive criminal justice system in place.
And that's what you want to discuss today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So in celebrating the Day of the African Child, we have in mind these 4 very important goals, which are rooted in Agenda 2040 under the Charter of the African Charter on the Rights of the Child. Okay. So in marking this day, the Director of Public Prosecutions, the division, the Children's Division, they actually visited Lodwar.
Yes.
Lodwar is one of the areas where we have refugees and marginalized communities. Kakuma specifically, and other parts of Turkana County. They visited other parts of Turkana County, not just Lodwar. Yeah. They went to Kakuma. So from 14th to 18th this month, in marking the Day of the African Child, yes, the Director of Public Prosecutions, through the officers in the ODPP, they have been going around that country, conducting sensitizations. They have been reviewing case files involving children, especially this time when COVID-19 has been a very major challenge with respect to having cases expedited in court and heard as quickly as possible. So to ensure that children are not kept in remand for too long, to ensure that the child-friendly the criminal justice system is sensitive to the needs of the children. Yes. They have been reviewing these case files with a view to expediting them. Okay. They have also been conducting sensitizations to the community. They have also been having stakeholder forums with other agencies in the criminal justice system with respect to the rights of the child. So we've been having stakeholder consultative meetings.
Community engagement.
Yes, and multi-agency forums. We've been reviewing case files at Kakuma. So the Director of Public Prosecution is committed to ensure that the criminal justice system is sensitive to the rights of the children. Okay. So there are so many activities which are ongoing in various parts of the Republic by the Director of Public Prosecution. And today, actually, they are culminating today from 14th up to
18th.
Today.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Madam Rose, tell us, how did your office commemorate the Day of the African Child?
Thank you, Anita. The Day of the African Child was commemorated on Wednesday. That is the day before yesterday.
Yeah, 16th.
Yes.
Yes.
And the key guest speaker was the Chief Justice.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, we had the Cabinet Secretary Labour. He gave his key mark address, and the Chief Justice emphasized on the importance of the criminal justice system with regards to children. Yes.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Ah, that's very interesting. So what is so special about being an African child?
Well, Anita,
Why
we are all African children,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And we know all the problems that we face are probably not faced by other children in other continents. And that is why you have the African Committee of Experts who came up with rather we have the African Charter that actually was born after the CRC, what do we call it, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, because Africans realized that there were quite a number of issues that were not addressed by the CRC.
Yeah.
Things like children of imprisoned mothers, teenage pregnancies, children in armed conflict. Those issues are not actually directly addressed by the CRC. So Africans decided that we need to have our own charter that is going to deal
So CRC
with
is
our
international.
issues. Yeah, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child.
Okay.
It's global.
Oh,
Actually.
it's a global thing.
Yes.
So the African child is quite troubled or is faced. You're
It's because
born
unique
predisposed to issues
to our own unique
that are
issues.
special.
Yes.
Ah,
But we
interesting.
are dealing with them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so have we made progress as a country since this was adopted?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I cannot even start naming the milestones
Yeah.
that Kenya has achieved in terms of child protection. Of course, we are signatories to all those international legal instruments
yeah.
that actually protect children, the mother of them being the UNCRC, the Palermo Protocol. There are hundreds and hundreds of them. Of course, I believe maybe in the coming days, we are going to take stock and see how far then has Kenya gone
Yes.
in the implementation of the aspirations of Agenda 2040. Yes.
It's quite ambitious.
It's quite ambitious. It has 10 aspirations, and so we will break them down and see what have we as Kenya
have we achieved?
been able to achieve, and a lot has been achieved.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is there like a scorecard that tells, like that the African Union has, that shows progress made by countries?
Oh yes, actually I think it launched a study on that day to show the progress being made. For example, in a birth registration, how many children are we able to register? How many children are able to access school? You know, do we have free and compulsory education? And for Kenya, we definitely know that we do have them. How does our criminal justice look at children? Is it friendly? Is it child-centered? You know, it takes into account all those things. It does monitoring of the implementation of the charter as well of the aspirations.
Okay.
Yes.
That's quite interesting. I never knew that this Day of the African Child was taken quite seriously.
Oh, it is taken quite seriously, and
Yeah.
the children are also participants. It's not only the grown-ups.
The grown-ups,
Who
yes.
sit and organize for this day,
Yeah,
Anita.
yeah.
We must involve the children from the planning up to that day.
Okay.
There was a speech by the children on that day. Because we have children assemblies
Yes.
countrywide.
Yes.
And they have their own officials. So they elected one of them from, I think, Bomet or Kericho
Yes, yes.
County.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
he's the one who
read that
represented-
speech.
yes,
It was
he's the one
very
who represented
it
them.
was very well done.
Yes.
So now back to the Turudi kwa ground.
Eh.
What is the mandate of your office?
Wow. The Directorate of Children's Services is established by the Children's Act, and its overall mandate is the safeguarding, promotion, welfare, and upholding of children's rights countrywide. So we must ensure that we have established programs, facilities, documents, whatever it takes to ensure that the lives of the Kenyan children are well guarded. We are the duty bearers. Children are the rights holders. Therefore, we must accord to them what the law accords them. We must implement activities to ensure that they are safe.
They're safe.
Yes.
Are they safe?
Oh, yes, they are. Are you doubting that, Anita?
No. They're just asking. That's good. And I'm just wondering, and I know you've discussed this before on the show, Mr. Baraza. What is the mandate of the children's department at ODPP? I mean, what guides you as an office? Of course, the right of the child first, right?
Yes.
But then, what guides you as an office?
Thank you very much, Madam Anita, again. As my colleague has rightfully put it, at the international level, we have the United Nations Convention on the Right of the Child, which was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in 1989. It came into force 1990. Thereafter, a year later, the African Charter on the Right of the Child was formed. Africa is the only continent that has a treaty, continent-based treaty,
Oh, nice.
specifically for children. It's the only region that has a treaty to address the rights of the children. So we are guided at the international level by the United Nations Convention on the Right of the Child. And thereafter, regionally, we have the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. Under the Aspiration 2040, member states are required to put in place national legislative institutional framework. In line with that, the Kenyan state has a constitution. Under Article 53 of the Kenya Constitution, there are elaborate rights for the child, specific application of basic fundamental rights and freedom to children under Article 53 of the Kenya Constitution. Very elaborate. Under Article 21 of the Kenyan Constitution, all state organs and agencies are supposed to ensure that these rights are upheld and promoted. So we are guided by the international norms and treaties and conventions.
Country,
Also regionally, we have norms under the African Union. And within the state, at the municipal level, we are guided by the Constitution of Kenya. There are also numerous legislations. My colleague has just spoken about the Children's Act. There are other legislations that seek to promote. So Kenya has put in place legislative, constitutional, there are institutions. The ODPP is one of them, a very key player in the criminal justice system. We interact with children in conflict with the law. We interact with children in need of care and protection, children in contact with the law. So we are a very key player together with the Children's Department. So we are guided by all these legislative and institutional policies and frameworks that the Kenyan government and the international community has put in place.
That's very interesting that you have so many laws, regional, international, local, but we took our ground to be different, honestly. There's child marriage still going on, there's FGM, there's child labor. I mean, what are the strides made in this specific pockets of that concern children? Because amongst the actors in the children's the justice system for children, they are caregivers, they are parents, and maybe that would just be directed to you. Then how do you do this? Is there community engagement? How do as a parent, I'm not sure I even know those laws exist. So is there a level you engage with parents and caregivers? Yeah. But then before we get to that, what are the strides made in this child labor, FGM? Despite all these laws, are the children really safe?
Well, as discussed, we have laws in place, numerous laws in place. We have institutional frameworks in place, which are doing their best to ensure that the best interests of the child are promoted, the children are safe. And these problems are not just unique to one specific state. These problems are global, and we require global solutions to this problem. A single state on its own may not be able to eradicate or to have solutions to these challenges. For example, problems like online cyber crimes, which do not follow geographic boundaries, they require the international community. So they are not just unique to Kenya. Everywhere you go, you'll find child exploitation, inhuman treatment. You'll find violence which affects children. They are there, but in Africa we have these problems affecting us in a unique way. So the government of Kenya, department, the Kenyan government, they are doing all this. We at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, we have been charging people for child neglect, for violence against children. It's not tolerated. And every time we come across a case where a child's rights have been violated, it's taken very seriously. We have a children division dedicated specifically to look into issues of rights of the child. and the prosecution council have been sensitized. The DPP has developed guidelines on how to handle children. We have plea bargain guidelines. We have diversion guidelines. We have very many guidelines and policies which have been developed to sensitize prosecution council on how to handle children. So we take issues of children very seriously. And we also do stakeholder engagements with other players within the criminal justice system through the multi-agency forum. So we are taking issues of child rights very seriously in line with international and national obligations. So we can say that the future of our children is guaranteed.
It's safeguarded.
We are doing everything we can in our power to safeguard the future of our children, because we know that our future is the children, and we have to protect these children.
That sounds very cliche when someone says that the future is the children. But then, like I keep saying, today I think I'm just on to between different background.
Yes.
You know very well, because you're in social services, that there's still child labor, there's still FGM going on, there's child marriage, cruelty. How do you engage caregivers? How do you get to the point where now you have engagements in the community to discuss these things? Because you know what, Mr. Barai said, it's very important, it's very nice, but it's at policy level. How do we come down to really experiencing all this?
Thank you, Anita. Like you say, maybe on the ground, mambo ni different,
Yeah.
but different in a good way.
Oh, good.
In the sense that there is implementation of the laws and the policies that Baraza has alluded to. For instance, the Directorate of Children's Services has got 298 officers based in 298 constituencies. All right, these are children officers in all those constituencies. What do? They deal with matters child protection. For instance, in the last year, we launched a violence against children survey.
Yes.
That was the second one that the Directorate was launching. Alongside that, we came up with the National Prevention and Response Plan that is now addressing, it's a 5-year plan that is addressing all those issues that you're raising, be it child labor, be it child marriage, which we know it is wrong, neglect, yes. When you look at child marriage, it's actually informed by our cultural practices.
Yes.
So then how do we try to change the behavior of our members of our community that it is wrong to marry off a child? Children do not give consent.
No.
And in our context, a child is any person below the age of 18. Yes, so they cannot give consent, for instance, to get married. So we have come up with programs. We normally have community engagements. Tunaenda pale kwa ule mama hata hapo kwa soko. You know, we are down to earth because we know it. We don't make a change down there, then all these laws.
Then it's just policy.
Yes, it's just policy gathering dust at our shelves. Yeah. So we also have a community-based approach to child protection through what we call the area advisory councils. I call it community-based because it comprises of both state and non-state actors within a given, for example, sub-location, because we have them at the sub-location level as well as the county level. So at the sub-location level, and this is where the rubber meets the road, you have the sub-county children officer who is the secretary to this committee. And what happens? The members of the community bring the issues that are afflicting children, yes, to that committee.
That's exactly what I meant.
And
How
that is what
we do engagements?
We are already there.
Oh, good.
We are already there. We
Yes.
hold regular community conversations.
Yeah.
Just by going even to a social hall, you know, you don't need anything fancy.
Yes.
Sit there, go to the level of those people, gather info from them. You know, also disseminate what you have and tell them we are doing ABC.
Yes.
Yes.
Ah, that's good.
Yeah.
It's very important to mention about a child. The law describes a child as a person below 18.
18 years.
Yes.
But the age of criminal responsibility is 8. But in the spirit of creating what is called a child-friendly justice system, isn't that contradictory? When you say below 18 I'm a child, but age of criminal responsibility is 8. What gives? Why is it so contradictory? Is there talk somewhere at policy level that says these two need to merge, to be the same?
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Anita. First of all, just to add on what my colleague has said, it will not just take judicious means alone to ensure the rights of the child are safeguarded. It will also take the community involvement, like what she's been saying, my colleague Ross. the community has to be involved. It's not for the ODPP alone, it's not for the children's department, it's not for the government alone.
And this is Africa. The village raises the child.
Exactly.
At least, I don't know that it still happens in this century,
Yes.
in this time and age.
It should be a whole of society
Yeah.
approach,
Yeah.
whole of society approach,
Yes.
not just government alone, whole of society.
Not just boardroom discussion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because some of these things were rooted in culture,
Yes.
where children were even being married before they attained the age of 18.
18.
That has been criminalized at international law and municipal law. So the society needs to embrace change and get rid of these outdated and retrogressive cultural practices, which are really, really not good at all and repugnant. So it will take a whole of society approach.
Sema repugnant hapa.
Okay, we will avoid the legal terms.
You have to break it down.
Thank you.
Yes.
So through the whole of society approach, the sensitizations and all that, we are trying to achieve that goal. Now to your question about the age of criminal responsibility and the definition of the child, both at the
18.
Yes.
But then just before you talk about that, what does criminal responsibility mean? What does it mean that there's something like, just break it down.
Okay.
Yeah.
In layman's terms, criminal responsibility is the age at which someone can be held criminally liable for his acts or omissions at law. Before someone attains that age, that person cannot be held criminally liable for any acts or omission which amount to a crime. A crime is an act or omission which is outlawed at law. It must be specifically defined in a written law for it to amount to a crime. First of all, what do we mean by a criminal offense? What do we mean by a crime? A crime is an act or omission specifically outlawed in a written law, in a statute or a written law. So
We have to talk in Kiswahili then. Criminal responsibility ni nini?
Criminal responsibility ni kule kuwajibika, ule umri ambao tunaweza sema kwamba
unajua ni nini ulifanya
kabisa, unajua ni nini ulifanya, na kwa hivyo sasa wewe unafaa kujibu mashtaka, unafaa kushtakiwa. Kwa hivyo sheria inasema kabla haujafika huo umri, hata kama mtu ametenda kitu fulani ama hajatenda hicho kitu fulani ambacho ni makosa kisheria, mtu anaweza kuwa ametenda makosa kisheria, ni makosa kulingana na sheria, lakini miaka yake kama hajafikisha hiyo miaka, huyo mtu hafai kushtakiwa.
Sasa tunasema Kiswahili si lugha changu, but
sure.
Tunasema kama niko mtoto wako miaka 5
kweli
na pengine auwe mtoto mwenzake, tunasema haizi jibu hizo mashtaka, si ndio? Lakini because the law says criminal responsibility is at maybe age 8, it means an 8-year-old akiua atachukuliwa responsible for his or her actions.
Yes, because now they have attained the age of criminal responsibility.
So sasa swali ni mbona hiyo age na age in definition na law ziko tofauti, mbona zisishikane?
A child is protected as a child up to the age of 18 years. That is the age that was set at international law. 18 years and below, those are children. They need to be protected against violence, against inhuman labor, against exploitation, against abuse and neglect, because these are people who cannot take care of themselves. Below 18, they are still going to school, they still live with their parents, they don't work, they are dependent. So they need to be protected, they are children. But that doesn't mean that they cannot be held liable for acts and omission which amount to an offense. So long as they are above the age of 8, they will still be children up to 18 years. But if they commit offenses, they need to be held accountable for that. There are mechanisms for dealing with them. But the way we deal with these children who are below 18 years, even though they have attained the age of criminal responsibility, we do not deal with them the same way we deal with adults.
Okay.
There are safeguards within the law to ensure that the criminal justice system is sensitive to these people who are below the age of 18 years. For example, they should not be held in custody when they have committed an offense. That should be the last resort, holding them in custody. And if they have to be held in custody, it should be for their best interests. And it should be for the shortest minimum period possible. So that's one of the procedural safeguards
That safeguards them.
to safeguard
But
them.
then
Yes.
that disparity in criminal responsibility and child, the definition of a child, is it not in itself a violation of the rights of the child?
It's not a violation because someone who is above 8 years has a conscience and knows the difference between right and wrong. The rationale is that below 8 years,
That's debatable. What do you think? Is it a violation?
Actually, I know it's been an issue, and the new children's bill, there's a children's bill pending in Parliament. This age has been revised upwards, I think, to 12 years.
Criminal responsibility.
Yes. Yes.
I think that
Because there has
makes
been a,
Sasa mngefika
Yes,
15,
itakuwa, I'm
mngefika
telling you.
16, ingekuwa
So I
sawa.
think itakuwa sawa ni 12 years.
Ah, okay,
ikipitishwa
okay.
when the bill is
Ah,
actually
alright.
enacted.
Okay, so then I mean, one of those reasons why the justice system is becoming restorative is to decongest the system. But you mentioned about not holding children in custody, but then you still hear children are held in custody because the country is bail. And you even had the DPP saying, wale wako chini ya bail between 1,000 and 5,000 tutalipa. But you see, that's not sustainable. Who is supposed to do this, madam? I mean, when children are held in custody for not being able to pay, to bail themselves out, or even their parents can't raise it, yet the law says we should really not hold them in custody because it exposes them to the system.
yes,
What should happen in such cases?
we have safeguards in place, and in this day and age, it's not proper to have children being held in custody because they were not able to afford bail. You heard the DPP just saying and ensuring that those children even went ahead and paid bail for them to ensure that they are not in. So it's our policy, and every prosecution council has been sensitized. Every time you come across a case involving a child, number one, try and make sure that criminal justice should be the last resort. Prosecution should be there are other alternatives to prosecution. So number one, try and make sure that this child is not taken to court. We have other alternatives to prosecution. Use those alternatives. Plea bargain is there. There are many mechanisms under the Children's Act to address issues of children, including if there is an offense that has been committed. We don't need to take them to court. Ensure that you don't take them to court. Deal with them using these other mechanisms. So it is a matter of policy.
Okay.
It is also a matter of law.
And you know, when you speak about policy, it's very interesting things they're discussed in the boardrooms. But how does a child in conflict with the law or in contact with the law know that plea bargain exists?
We ensure, as prosecutors, our role under the Constitution, Article 157, Article 11, we are supposed to ensure that human rights are protected, including the rights of the child.
Okay.
So whenever you come across a subject, we don't call them accused people in criminal cases.
The children?
Children. We don't call them accused. We don't call them suspects. We call them subjects. So already we try to make the justice system sensitive and friendly to them. So whenever you come across even a suspect who is supposed to be a minor, a subject, ensure you get a child age assessment done. Once an age assessment is done, you involve the children's officers. We work together hand in hand with the children officers, the probation department, the judiciary. We work hand in hand with them. So whenever a subject is brought to court, or whenever a case is brought to you as the prosecutor, and you realize that this is a child, then prosecution should be the last resort. Ensure that child does not come in contact with the prosecution process.
Okay.
We also visit the prisons. We visit the prisons We review the files. If we come across a minor who is being held there, we ensure that we review that file and we take that case very seriously.
Does that mean that there's need for more collaboration? Because mtoto anafikaje hapo?
Yes, there is need.
Why would it take you
yes.
to go to celebrate, to mark the Day of the African Child, to go review a case file, to discover that a child is in the system? I mean, so I think maybe a discussion for another forum, that there's need for more collaboration. But then, like we say, vitu ni different. Na wewe ndio representative wa vitu ni different leo. So what happens when unaona DPP ameachilia watoto wameenda? As in, tumelipa hiyo bail. Lakini kuna kale kasugu, kale kalazima katarudia. I think he even said, na msiende kurudia, mfanye makosa ndio mrudi tena. So what happens when children keep repeating these things? Do you still have approved schools? Are they under your department? And then who approves a child to go, at least you call approved schools, and then who approves a child to go to an approved school?
Anissa, they are no longer referred to as approved schools. It sounds so colonial, eh?
Yes. Oh, it's colonial?
Yes.
Yeah,
under the Children's Act 2001,
yeah,
the name was changed to rehabilitation schools.
Okay.
And we have quite a number. And yes, they under the Department of Children's
Oh,
Services.
good. Yes.
Yes, we have officers who are there. And what happens is that when a child is committed to a rehabilitation school, of course, it's a court process. They are committed for 3 years or less.
Wow.
Yes, they can be released.
Shule,
yes.
lazima keti 3 years.
Not a must, that is the maximum. Depending, anaweza kuwa on good behavior, na anaweza wachiliwa.
Wait, that is, it is like a sentence?
No,
Even
we don't
by the
sentence
court?
children. We commit. We don't use words like
Semantics.
sentence for children. Yeah, we must be sensitive to the kind of words we use so that we don't label or stigmatize
Yeah.
these children.
Very true.
Yes, so we use words like we committed them to a
Very
rehabilitation school. We
Okay.
have quite a number throughout the country.
Okay.
So when they're there, mind you, Anita, it's not every child who was made for academics. Sometimes children play truant because we are forcing them to go to school, but their talents are in other areas. You see,
Yes.
maybe I want to do carpentry, but I'm forcing my child, lazima anilete hiyo A. Really? Why would this child not rebel?
But Kenya, like most African countries, is so academic.
That
So
is it.
akikata shule, lazima ende shule.
And that's why CBC is in place now. It is changing all that.
Really?
Yes, it will change.
CBC we can discuss.
So when they go to the rehabilitation school,
Yeah.
we have a number of trades that these children are engaged in. We train them on several skills, carpentry, welding, name it. And they do sit for trade sports as well. They do sit for trade tests. Yeah, and they're examined by NITA.
All right.
Yeah, so by the time they're leaving our rehabilitation schools, at least we have empowered them in one skill or another. And by the time they leave, we give them a kit so that they can start off. Sometimes we also attach them, they go for apprentice in the communities.
What's the lowest age you've
We
committed
commit,
a child?
no, it has to be, it can't be less than 10 years. It's normally between 10 and 14 years. That's when we commit
Do
them to
girls also
rehabilitation.
get committed?
Oh yes, we have 2 rehabilitation schools for girls at Kirigiti and Dagoretti.
So mi siwezi kuja kuambia ati mtoto wangu ananisumbua, mi nataka ende approved.
Anita, you know, sometimes parents are also the cause of these issues. So by the time you come to me as a children officer and tell me, unataka mtoto wangu aende approved school, really we must sit down.
And
I must,
understand.
yes,
Yeah.
I must do a social inquiry on you. As a family, how are you faring on? Why is this child playing truant? The push factors could be from the home, from the parents. Yes. Yeah. So there's a lot that we do, and we commit a child as a final or as a last resort.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then someone argued that exposing children to the justice system just makes it worse for them. Is it true? Does it destroy them forever? Ukipeleka mtoto rehabilitation center,
school, yeah.
alafu akutane na ule mbaya. See, they learn from each other, and then it becomes just like as though they're in remand or in prison. I mean, how do you have psychologists? Do you have people who watch over them? Is it a proper system?
Yes, we do. Once the court, for example, commits a child to a rehabilitation school, they don't just go direct to the rehab school. We have what we call a reception and assessment center. We have one for boys.
Okay.
We have one for girls.
Yeah.
So when they're committed there, they stay there for a period of not less than 3 months.
Yeah.
While they're there, you're undertaking assessment tests to see where do they fit. Are they a high risk? Are they medium risk? Are they low risk? Because we have, again, our schools categorized in those risk levels. So hautapata ule mtoi ako maybe low risk, unampeleka to a high risk. Yes.
Okay.
So we ensure that we have done those assessments and classified them and commit them to the relevant school.
So beyond these other courses, these technical courses, wanaweza maliza wafanye KCP huko.
Wanafanyanga hata hiyo. Wanafanyanga and they pass so well actually.
Oh, that's
yes,
nice.
They do.
All right. And then just I want to go on to social, but I'm just nagged to ask about street children. Wameja?
Street children.
Yeah. Who should be taking care of them?
We have the Street Children's Rehabilitation Fund that deals with the issue of street children and street families. Yes, so it's taken care of by
is it under you? Or?
It's under the State Department of Social Protection.
Oh, social protection. Those ones, they become too many. So I want to go on to social media so that we get to ask questions. And we haven't even talked about children in conflict with the law and children in contact with the law. I think one of those, lazima tuongea Kiswahili hapa. We've discussed it in the show, and I still feel like I need to ask, what does this mean? How do you distinguish? So anyway, Munyagia Martin says, listening in from collective community action, and one thing stands out is that we have come a long way as a child justice sector. You agree?
Yes, we have.
We've come a long way.
Yes.
Yeah. So that is Munyagia Martin. Thanks, Munyagia, for tuning in on YouTube. And then there's Sheila Magomere, who says, a good conversation right here, especially where a child is defined as a person under the age of 18, but criminal responsibility makes an 8-year-old answerable for his or her crime. Do we tell them in school, Baraza? Is it something we need to go to primary school and teach them criminal responsibility? Because children can be manipulated.
Sure.
Yeah. They know when to become a child. They know when to become,
an offender.
Is it something that should be done, or is it something that is being done currently? I mean, in terms of engagement.
I agree with you, Madam Anita. It's our responsibility, all of us as parents, as caregivers, church, religious institutions. We need to sensitize our children about the need to do the right thing, sensitize them, not to commit offenses, because it is in their interest to be brought up responsible citizens in future, because they need to be ready for taking up these responsibilities. After the age of 19, the world will look at them differently, not the way it was looking at them when they were below children, 18. So we need to shape them as parents, take responsibility, inculcate in them good manners and discipline, so that they can grow up responsible citizens who will not give problems to other people. So but it's very important.
Need discipline.
Yeah, and also in addition to what Baraza is saying, Anita, we have forums. For example, when it comes to the right of children to participation, we have the children assemblies. And through these platforms, we teach the children not only their rights, but also their duties. They have a responsibility. Rights go hand in hand with responsibilities. Yes. You cannot just have rights and you don't have any responsibilities. And when we hold some of these forums, the children, sometimes we ask them, how do you feel about the criminal justice system? And they'll tell you they would want to see more child-friendly courts. That judicial officers should be more friendly. They feel that they're not well treated. Of course, there's a lot of change that has taken place, and I think that would be a debate for another whole day that we cannot tackle in here. But we try to enlighten them and to create awareness that these are your rights, but these are also your responsibilities. Make sure that you don't commit an offense.
Just imagine because you're a child.
Yes, just because you're a child, because tutaenda tukupeleke kwa rehabilitation school. Yes.
Aya, Karongigi says, very good conversations, especially alternatives to prosecution. Those are now diversion and plea bargain. Yes. But my take would be, I mean, from just a citizen point of view, Mawanjiku point of view, these are discussions that must be had with this group of people. It can't just be at boardroom level or at policy. Because like I was being told by one of the people who visited YCT yesterday in committee, that mtoto anauliza kama manslaughter is atatoka jilini manslaughter. I mean, hata elewi manslaughter ni nini. And they're there for very serious crimes. So I think they need to be informed and educated as well, sensitized rather, on what these things mean. And then Munyagia Martin says, having a child division within ODPP has really helped a great deal. Interesting conversation between DCS and ODPP. And then Divina James Caballo says, this is a very interesting conversation, especially on the issues of justice and age. Thank you all for bringing this session. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. I will go to Facebook. Byron Menezes. Jina zingine. Lakini ni jina mzuri. Thanks, Byron, for tuning in. He asks, morning, how do we proceed with a child who does not have a birth certificate and is an orphan facing a capital charge? I'll ask you this, but not even that, the birth certificate. You said it's one of those things that is in the charter that you need.
One of the aspirations.
How is it faring?
It's
And
also
then-
in the Children's Act.
At what point is a child registered?
At the point of birth,
Hospitali.
wakati mama anatoka, there's that birth notification.
Yes.
And we know within the first 6 months, ukipeleka, then you're issued a birth certificate free of charge.
Right.
Oh, the first 6 months.
Yes, you are issued. Yes, it's free of charge.
Mbona msi-
It's only we wait mpaka watoto wanaenda kuingia shule.
shule ndio unakimbia
That is
kutoka
when tunakimbia,
hospitali.
then tunalipa. Saa hizo tunasema tunalipishwa, but otherwise it's free between birth and 6 months. You can acquire birth certificate free of charge.
Mimi nina swali ya umati.
Eh.
If at birth the father of my child is Mr. XX, and then at registration it is now Mr. YY, how does that change?
Mbona unataka kunyima mtoto haki yake ya ule baba alimzaa? Unataka kumwekea YY na XX
Sasa
yuko.
kama
Why?
XX alinicheza
That
akaenda.
child will ask you when they grow up. Na utakuwa na wakati mgumu sana because you go and look for XX.
So you don't, it is not advisable, but does it happen?
It does happen a lot. It's something we witness. Parents also come to us to seek for advice, but we always advise them, remember this child is growing. And if there were issues, it was between you and him.
Yeah.
It's not between this child. And this
Kama
child has got a
nikataa
right.
mtoto,
The DNA is in there. And the issue must have been between the two of you. But Anita, as social beings, we normally suffer from a crisis, identity crisis rather.
Yes.
Yes.
Mtoto atafika age fulani, they're like, so who is my dad? Utamwambia nini? That he died. So we try even in our offices, even when parents really, there's a misunderstanding, we try to ensure that the bond between a child and the parent
Sure.
is not
Does
broken.
it's not broken.
Yes, we must always cement that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. But there are those circumstances that
Yes,
that
they are
is
there.
allowed.
They are there, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. So Byron asked, a child without a birth certificate or an orphan is facing a capital charge. What happens? Kama sasa probation officer is brought in.
Yes, actually, even before the prosecution council makes the decision to charge, the DPP has formulated a very good policy on decision to charge, the factors that you must take into consideration. So even before you arrive at that decision to charge this child, I don't know how old that child is, who is being charged with a capital offense, and I'm not sure which capital offense Byron is referring to. But a lot of care must be taken to ensure that other alternatives to prosecution are explored. Because at the end of the day, we will need a report from the probation officer,
Yeah.
which will be taken into consideration. Even if the trial was to proceed up to its logical conclusion,
Yeah.
the judicial officer might not even give a custodial sentence for children. The court may not give a custodial sentence. The court may order a non-custodial sentence.
What is custodial?
Custodial ni ile anafungwa kwa jela. Yeah. Koti inaweza sema asifungwe hata kama hiyo
Asifungwe.
kesi itaendelea mpaka
Okay.
mwisho. Koti inaweza amua huyu mtoto afungwe. So kwa nini tuende hiyo route?
Hiyo route yote.
Kwa nini tumshtaki tuende hiyo route yote? Afadhali huyu mtoi apelekwe tudil na yeye na njia zingine
Okay.
kuliko kumshtaki, because at the end of the day ukiangalia zile sentences watoto wanapewa, koti inajaribu kuangalia kama watoto, it's a child sensitive criminal justice system. Kwa hivyo hakuna haja upeleke mtoto apigwe pingu, apelekwe pale kotini, apitishwe through hizo process zote, when tuna mbinu mbadala vile tunaweza deal na yeye. Na DPP ameformulate hizi guidelines tuweze kuziangalia. So that
Mbinu mbadala.
mbinu mbadala.
Tunafundishwa Kiswahili hapa na Rose.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Rose, I'll ask you, again, this happens on the ground. Mtoto ananisumbua, then I say nitakupeleka kwa karao wa kufundisha adabu.
Yes.
What happens? I mean, why does that even happen? Because it happens.
It does
What if
happen.
you come across such a case? What happens?
And we have come across
Yeah.
several of those cases. You don't just take the word of the parent at face value. We do a lot of social inquiry. We do a lot of talking and interviews with the children, with the school, with the neighbors, to find out is really what the parent could be accusing the child of. Is it genuine? Is it true? Or do they just want to get rid of this child and they took a rehabilitation school? So there's a lot of work that goes into this. We even keep the child under supervision for a period before now we decide that this child has gone beyond parental control, and the only place that we can help him is rehabilitation school. Yes.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. That's clear. I think Byron has asked again, how do you proceed with a child who does not have a birth certificate? I think that was answered. So Luke has been our star student. I think we need to invite Luke to the studio. Every other week he's always
And
engaging us.
for Byron saying, to answer him again,
Yeah.
if there is no birth certificate, an age assessment is normally done. We work together with the children's department, with the public health and doctors. They're always there in court. So when a child is brought and we are not sure whether it's a child or an adult, usually an age assessment is called for and it's done, and it becomes a proof of age.
Isn't that difficult?
It's not.
Trying to assess someone's age.
The doctors know how to do it.
They do it, yeah?
Yes, they do it very quickly.
Okay.
They know how to do it.
And in birth registration, Madam Rose,
Yes.
what happens to those people who give birth at home? How do they register for this?
They report to the chief. So there's a whole government structure. At the chief's office, you go, and the chief, I think, will write something for you, and then you proceed to the registration office.
Okay.
The birth registration office.
All right. Okay, interesting. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Luke asks, if someone wants to unlawfully own a land that was left to a child after their parents died, which procedure can be followed to ensure the child gets justice? I think in land grabbing.
Yes, Luke is talking about land belonging to a deceased person.
Yes.
Property belonging to deceased persons is subject to the Law of Succession Act.
Okay.
That is Chapter 160 Laws of Kenya. And there's a detailed provision in that law how property from a deceased person should pass to his beneficiaries. So if it is land and it is registered in the name of the deceased person, the beneficiaries will have to go to court and petition the court for letters of administration. And the court now will issue a grant of letters of administration, and that grant will be confirmed, showing how, what each beneficiary is supposed to get. And it is that document that the land registrar should use to transfer title, to transfer property to the beneficiaries. Kwa hivyo mtu akikuja tu alafu aende afanye ukarabati yake huko, hiyo green card kule kwa land registry itaangaliwa, na official search ikifanywa itapatikana kwamba kuna vile alifanya ukarabati akaibia huyu mtoto. Kwa hivyo sio rahisi hivyo, na kama kuna land registrar amehusika, huyo land registrar atashtakiwa. Na huyu mtu vile vile ambaye atapatikana na hizo stakabadhi za ukora ni forgery, hiyo hata yeye atashtakiwa na hiyo land, kwa hivyo atanyang'anywa. Kwa hivyo iwaendee wale wote ambao wana disinherit watoto, wajue kwamba kuna sheria ya urithi inaitwa Law of Succession, na hii sheria lazima ifuatwe. Kama kuna mtoto yoyote ama kuna jamii yoyote ambayo kuna watoto wamenyang'anywa mali zao, basi waende wakaripoti kwa kituo cha polisi haraka iwezekanavyo, na hata wanaweza kutuambia ofisi ya mkurugenzi wa mashtaka ya umma, hatua itachukuliwa haraka iwezekanavyo.
Wewe ni Mswahili. I have nothing more to add. Thanks, Beatrice. Beatrice says it's a great discussion. Kipingeno says great discussion. I think this one, someone's trying to answer something about Article 21 of the Constitution, something children. That is just a comment. Well, let me see, Lucas. Give the procedure whereby a child who is not supported by his father can follow and get justice. Do you deal with deadbeat parents? Because nowadays, ni mama ama ni baba, it cannot just be the men.
Yes.
But what happens to deadbeat parents?
The law, Anita, is so clear. The Children's Act is so clear that no person should run away from their parental responsibilities. Even the Constitution, Article 53, clearly articulates that both parents have got a responsibility to bring up that child. So whoever is concerned can report, start with the Children's Office. We normally hold, we discuss with both parties to show them the importance of bringing up their child together, even if they're not staying together. If that fails, then we have the children's courts. Yes.
So I know that these cases, a lot of these cases where Anita atazuia XX kwa watoto wake mpaka atume pesa, mpaka M-Pesa ifanye tingli utaona watoto wako. Is that criminal?
It shouldn't be. You know now that is a civil matter.
It's a civil matter.
It's a civil matter and well handled at the children's court as well as in our offices. Yes.
But legalese, Mr. Lawyer, is it illegal?
Neglect.
Child neglect.
Neglect.
Child
Is a
neglect.
crime.
You know when this parent is denying
Access.
this child
Yeah.
the right to access her father or her mother, he's actually neglecting the child's emotional needs. So neglect should be viewed widely, not just in terms of basic, yes, but pia ukimdeny ile psychological support, emotional support ya baba yake ama mama yake sio vizuri. Kwa hivyo wazazi washirikiane, hata kama wamekosana, walikosana, tumekosana wawili, lakini sio mtoto.
Yeah, sure.
Mtoto tumwache access baba na mama, so that afurahie kuwa karibu na mamake.
Yeah.
Otherwise DPP akikupata unazuia mtoto kuona baba yake.
Oh my, that's very interesting. Luke has another question on land, and I think because our experts on standby, this one may be responded to by one of our experts. But the question he asks is, what about if the land is not registered? I mean, the land grabbed from the child. Which procedure can be followed to ensure a child gets justice? I think this is actually a live case for Luke. Yeah, it sounds very personal.
Yes.
Yeah.
If the land is not registered, then it becomes very difficult to ascertain ownership. We will have to go to court and prove ownership. It may not be registered, but ownership can still be proved in court. So those are issues. The Law of Succession Act has mechanisms to address all those issues. So the best procedure for Luke or any other person to follow is to petition the court. The problem is that sometimes we don't go to court to do succession. We have a lot of land that is not registered. People enter into oral agreements in respect of land instead of having this agreement reduced into writing so that rights can be properly safeguarded. So the right procedure, petition the court for letters of administration in the through the Law of Succession Act. Let these issues be handled in court so that the court can determine issues of ownership, issues of rights, and all the property that belong to the deceased person. That will be the best procedure for him to follow, and thereafter the rights can be ascertained and yes.
Okay, I think that is just again one of those areas of sensitization.
Yes,
the law is quite wide.
Sensitization,
And,
very important.
Yeah, very difficult sometimes to know how to apply this, and it's very important. I want to wind up the show. I would think we could talk about this for hours. It's very exciting to discuss vitu kwa ground vile tofauti, especially when it comes to children and their caregivers. Policies there, laws are there, we are part of the international community, but how do we get this thing on the ground working for us? How does policy and vitu kwa ground zishikane? The synergy is needed, and that calls for a lot of discussion and collaboration, which is quite important. I want to thank you very much for coming to the show very early. Next time tutakuwa na kahawa moto moto just for you, and of course Badi data wachapa sana. So just to wind up and just a quick summary, how do you envision a child friendly system? What is your vision for a child friendly system as a department?
Thank you, Anita. For me, and I want to give a focus maybe to the criminal justice system. I want to look at a future whereby we have a child, for example, a child is a victim of abuse. The child doesn't have to necessarily go to court. And we have seen with COVID that we are now holding virtual courts. We are saying a child's statement or whatever it is can be recorded and then transmitted to the court, because then you traumatize the child every time you keep on asking them to repeat what happened to them. So I'm looking at such a time whereby we are going to leverage on technology and probably even use video links. Sometimes the child doesn't have to go to court and face the perpetrator. You know, this way we reduce the trauma on this child so that we help them to heal. Yeah,
the universe is working for you. COVID imetufundisha can do things differently.
We can do things differently.
Change is the only constant.
Yes.
So definitely we are evolving.
Yeah.
Finally, Mswahili wetu. I don't even know what your vision is in Kiswahili, but how do you see, what is your vision as ODPP for a child-friendly system, justice system?
Sure.
Yes.
I would like to, I look at it as a child-sensitive, in the language of the Committee of Experts, African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of a child-sensitive criminal justice system.
Yes.
We have made a lot of strides. So many institutions in place, so many laws, policies. We've made a lot of strides since we adopted the charter. Here in Nairobi, we have a children's court specifically dedicated to children, very sensitive, very friendly for children.
Is it like a PID's office?
It's
Does it have cartoons?
it has cartoons.
Oh, really?
It has pictures.
I was joking, and
It's
true.
very nice. It's very nice, very friendly. Even you visit the office of the DPP here in Nairobi, you'll find friendly rooms for children.
Oh, nice.
Yes. So my vision, I would like this to cascade also to the counties, so that the counties also can be able to experience that. So that if you visit places like Bomet, places
find
like
the same.
Nyeri,
Yeah.
Kapenguria, you can also be able to find the same facilities in place. I know we are growing and it is achievable. With time, all these other facilities will also be able to, you'll be able to find them in other counties as well. So that is my vision,
Your vision for
yes.
a child-friendly,
Thank you.
sensitive.
Child-sensitive system.
All right. All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on the show. Thank you for engaging with that. Our panel of experts, I love the discussion today. I don't know whether maybe because I'm a mother or because children definitely are our future, like Baraza says. Sounds cliche, but the truth is they actually are our future. There are policies in place, but what we are calling for right now is a synergy between policy and the caregivers, the community, the actual people on the ground. So the discussion is ongoing. We don't stop celebrating the African child because clearly we are predisposed from birth to different scenarios, civil wars, poverty, disease, and all that. So it's ongoing. We have to keep checking on the African child to see that they have the right environment for growth and to also be able to compete in the international arena with other children in the world. So I'd like to wish you a very good weekend and a blessed weekend and a good week ahead. Look out for our next topic next week to see what we'll be discussing. Keep celebrating the African child. Keep looking after the children. The criminal justice system and the government cannot do it on its own. You are also part of the system. Thank you very much and have a blessed day.